I was only trying to sell my car. That's really all it was. No games, no drama, no weird expectations. Just a simple transaction. My name is Alyssa, and at the time I was 25, living in a small, quiet neighborhood just outside of Dayton, Ohio. It was a peaceful place. Nothing crazy ever happened around here. A little boring maybe, but safe. At least, I thought so. Back then, I had a silver 2008 Toyota Corolla. It ran just fine. It wasn't the kind of car that would turn heads, but it was reliable, cheap on gas, and had been mine since college. I took care of it, changed the oil on time, replaced the tires. But I was finally making better money at my job as a dental assistant, and I had my eye on a Subaru Outback that had room for hiking gear, groceries, and maybe even a big dog someday. I didn't want to trade the car in. I knew how that went. I'd get lowballed into something insulting. A friend of mine, Daniel, had recently sold his motorcycle on Craigslist and told me it was the best way to get real value. Just be smart about it, he said. Meet in public, bring someone with you if you can, and trust your gut. Simple advice. I was careful. I thought I was careful. I listed the Corolla with good pictures and a clear description. Runs great, 118,000 miles. Recently detailed. Asking $3,800 OBO. I even got the tires rotated and made sure the tank was full so that anyone test driving it wouldn't run out. That's the kind of person I am. Thorough, fair, probably too trusting. Within an hour, the messages started rolling in. Some were clearly spam or scammers. One guy offered $2,000 sight unseen and said he'd send a driver with a cashier's check. I blocked him. Another guy asked if he could trade for a quad bike and a puppy. Blocked again. But that evening around 6:30, I got a message that felt normal. Hi, is the car still available? It came from a 937 area code the same as mine. I replied, yes, it is. A few minutes later, cool. Would love to come see it tonight. What's your address? I paused. I had already told myself I wouldn't meet anyone at home. My driveway was secluded. We didn't have street lights on my end of the block, and my roommate, Clara, was working a double shift that night. I replied, let's meet at the Kroger parking lot on Bellbrook Avenue. It's well lit. He replied, I'd prefer to come to your place. I don't really like driving around at night. I'll be quick. That rubbed me the wrong way. I texted, sorry, I'm only meeting at public places. No reply for an hour. Then just one word, lame. Blocked. The next day was quiet. I only got one message that seemed promising. This one came from a different number, same area code. Hi, Alyssa. I saw your Corolla listing. Still available? I said, yes, would you like to meet? He replied, sure. I'm free tonight after 7. Where's good for you? We agreed on the same Kroger lot. I asked his name, and he said Jake. I told him to park by the garden center. It was usually well lit and not too busy at that hour. I didn't ask too many questions. I wanted to believe most people were just decent. He never sent a picture of himself. I didn't push. That night, around 6:50 p.m., I cleaned the car one more time with a microfiber cloth and drove over. The air had that sharp Ohio chill, not cold enough to see your breath, but enough to make your fingers stiff if you stayed outside too long. I parked under the light and waited. At 7:04, a black Honda Civic pulled into the lot. It didn't have plates. I remember noticing that right away, just a dealer sticker and a temporary tag barely taped to the inside of the rear window. The car parked across from mine. A man got, tall, maybe 6 feet 1 inch. Hoodie pulled tight over a ball cap. I got out of my Corolla and gave a small wave. You Jake? He hesitated for half a second too long. Yeah, Jake. I smiled politely. Okay, feel free to take a look. No pressure. He walked around the car, didn't ask any questions. Just stared through the windows, peered into the wheel wells. After maybe 2 minutes, he looked up at me. I don't want it. Oh, I said, surprised. Okay, sure. Thanks for coming out anyway. He turned without another word, walked back to his car and sat there. I stood awkwardly for a second, then got back into my car. But when I turned on the engine, I saw his headlights come on too. My stomach sank. I didn't move right away. I just sat there watching in the rear-view mirror. His car idled behind me. Finally, I reversed slowly, trying not to overthink it. Maybe he just happened to be going the same way. That was possible, right? But when I pulled onto the main road, so did he. Same speed, same lane. I turned right. So did he. I turned left at the next light. He followed. 3 more turns, still behind me. By now my heart was hammering in my chest. I couldn't pretend anymore. I made a full loop around a block of suburban homes and doubled back toward downtown. He stayed with me. I was shaking. I didn't want to drive home. No way I'd let him follow me there. Instead, I turned into a Speedway gas station, pulled into a spot near the pumps, and turned off the engine. There were people around, bright lights, cameras. I watched in my side mirror as he slowed down, then kept driving. I exhaled, gripping the wheel until my knuckles were white. But 30 seconds later, his car came back around the block and pulled into the adjacent lot right next to a darkened hardware store. He just sat there, lights off. I called my roommate. She didn't pick up. I called Daniel. "Hey," I whispered, shaking. "Remember that Craigslist car buyer? I think he's following me. Where are you?" He asked, voice instantly alert. Speedway, the one off Wilmington Pike. "Stay there. I'm 10 minutes out." Jake stayed parked. I watched his silhouette, his face never visible. Every time a customer pulled into Speedway, I prayed it would distract him. But he stayed, still, watching. When Daniel arrived in his lifted red truck, I felt a wave of relief. He pulled up next to me, rolled down his window, and gave me a thumbs up. That's when the black Civic peeled out. No lights. Just vanished into the night. Later, when I checked both text threads again, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Both numbers, Jake and the first guy, were only a digit apart. One had messaged me the night before wanting to come to my house. The other met me and followed me afterward. Different names, same area code, almost identical numbers. Daniel helped me file a police report the next day, but nothing came of it. Burner phones. No plates, no real name. I never sold the car on Craigslist. I traded it in for $3,100. Maybe I could have gotten more, but I didn't care anymore. What haunted me most wasn't what happened, but what almost happened. If I'd let that first guy come to my house, if I'd gone home after Jake walked away, if I hadn't stopped at that gas station, I don't know what he wanted. Maybe he was trying to find out where I lived, maybe worse. But I never used Craigslist again. Some things just aren't worth the risk. I never liked Craigslist, if I'm being completely honest. Not because it's hard to use or anything, but because there's something about inviting a stranger into your life, even for a moment, that just doesn't sit right with me. Maybe it's the anonymity. Maybe it's how normal it all seems on the surface. But when you're giving away something for free, especially a big item like furniture, it means someone is going to show up. They're going to step into your world, and you don't really get to choose who. That's what this is about. It happened during the spring semester of my junior year in college, in a small 2-bedroom rental house just off Miller Avenue in a sleepy college town in Indiana. I lived there with my roommate and best friend Lena. We'd met freshman year and stuck together ever since. She was funny, sharp-tongued, and had a weird obsession with romantic comedies. Our house wasn't anything fancy. Appealing paint on the porch, uneven floors in the kitchen, and a heater that groaned like a dying animal. But it was ours, and we made it home. We were both excited because we'd just signed a lease for an off-campus apartment that was way nicer than our current place. Newer, closer to campus, and no more creaky stairs or squirrels in the attic. As we packed up to move, we realized we had a few things we didn't want to bring with us. Mostly junky furniture that barely survived 2 years of college living. One of those things was the couch. That couch was a beast. A hulking beige monstrosity with frayed arms and a permanent dent in the middle cushion. It had come from Lena's parents' basement and had survived who knows how many years of abuse before ending up in our living room. We knew it wasn't worth selling, but it was still in decent shape. Someone with a truck and no standards might want it. So Lena decided to list it on Craigslist for free. She took a few photos, wrote up a short description, and posted the listing under the free section. It reads something like, "Free couch, slightly worn but still comfortable, needs to be picked up, located near Miller and 3rd, message for details." She didn't put her phone number, just the Craigslist email reply option, and within a couple of days we sort of forgot about it. No one responded right away, and we were busy packing. Then on a Thursday afternoon, Lena said, "Hey, someone's coming for the couch later." I looked up from the box of mugs I was bubble wrapping. "Oh cool. Who?" She shrugged. "Some guy named Greg, I think. I've been messaging with him. He said he has a truck and can come today around 5. "All right. Hope he shows up," I said, not thinking much of it. Around 4:45, we moved the couch closer to the door and cleared a path to make it easier to carry out. Boxes were stacked everywhere, labeled with things like kitchen, bathroom, and miscellaneous crap, and it looked like a tornado had hit our living room. At 5:02, the doorbell rang. Lena went to answer it, and I followed, wiping my hands on my jeans. A man stood on our porch, tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing a baseball cap and a zip-up hoodie. He smiled in that overly polite way people do when they're trying not to seem like a threat. "You must be Greg," Lena said. "Yeah, here for the couch." She stepped aside and we let him in. He looked at the couch and walked around it like he was inspecting a used car. "Looks good," he said. "You guys sure you're just giving it away?" "Yeah," Lena said. "Too big for our new place." We made small talk as he continued to circle the couch. He told us he was moving into a new apartment across town and needed furniture. He said he found the listing that morning and drove over after work. He didn't seem weird, not exactly, but I felt off. Maybe it was his eyes. They flicked around the room a lot, like he was cataloging things. He asked where we were moving, and Lena just said closer to campus without giving specifics. Eventually we helped him carry the couch out to his pickup. It took all three of us to wedge it through the door and down the porch steps. His truck was parked in the driveway, not the curb, like he wanted a quick getaway. Once it was in, he said thanks and drove off without another word. We stood on the porch watching the truck disappear down Miller Street. "Well, that's that," Lena said. "Good riddance," I muttered. That thing was a backbreaker. That night around 9:30, Lena called out to me from the kitchen. "Hey, that guy texted me again." I walked over. She held her phone up. "Greg. Hey, sorry to bother. I think I left my wallet at your place. Could you check?" I frowned. His wallet? He was barely inside. "I know," she said. "But weird, right?" We searched the living room just in case. We hadn't seen a wallet earlier, but maybe it slid under something. Nothing at first, but when I moved one of the accent chairs near the window, I spotted something dark tucked underneath, almost centered beneath the chair, a black wallet. I picked it up slowly. It didn't feel right. There was no ID inside, just 3 crumpled $1 bills and a debit card. That was it. I looked at Lena. Why would he even carry this around? No ID, no photos, no receipts, not even a library card. She bit her lip. Should we give it back? Before we decided, he texted again. "Greg, I can swing by in 10 minutes. Let me know." We didn't reply. 2 or 3 minutes later, I went to turn on the porch light and froze. Someone was in our yard. It was him. He wasn't walking up the path. He was weaving between our side yard and the neighbor's driveway, moving slow, not like someone who was confused, like someone snooping. I ducked back from the window. "Lena, he's here already." "What?" she whispered. I led her to the upstairs window. From there, we had a partial view of the backyard. He was back there now, staring at the house. We both went cold. "He's not here for his wallet," Lena said quietly. We watched him linger near our back steps. Then he moved again, through the yard into the next neighbor's yard like he was circling. 5 minutes later, a knock at the front door. We didn't go to it immediately. We waited, listening. Another knock. We crept to the living room window. Sure enough, Greg was standing on the porch. His hands were in his pockets. He knocked again, harder. Lena stepped toward the door, but didn't open it. "Hey," she said through the door. "We found your wallet." "Great," he said. "Can you open the door?" "No, we'll just hand it to you through the window." There was a pause. "Then why?" "I just want to come in and say thanks. I was going to give you a little reward or something." "Just open the door." "No," she said louder this time. "We'll give you the wallet." That's it. He started raising his voice. "You think I'm some kind of criminal or something?" "No," I jumped in. "We're just not comfortable. You can take the wallet and go." He laughed under his breath, mocking. "Come on, I've got some cash in my car. Just let me in for a second." "Your wallet only had $3, I said. Silence. Then he stepped closer to the door and muttered, "So you looked inside." That's when Lena grabbed the wallet, went to the side window, and tossed it onto the lawn. "There's your wallet. Now leave, or we're calling the cops." He walked over and picked it up. Then he knocked again. "Let me give you the reward," he said, almost pleading. Lena yelled through the door, "Leave." And finally he did. We stayed up late that night. Every sound made us jump. At one point around 2 a.m., I thought I saw headlights slow down near our street, but maybe that was paranoia. The next morning, Lena showed me her messages with him. After that last night, he never contacted her again. We filed a police report just in case and left the couch incident out of our Craigslist dealings going forward. But we both agreed. That wallet, it wasn't forgotten. It was planted. He wanted a reason to come back, maybe to get into the house, maybe worse. And it was all over a free couch. If something feels off, it is. Never trust someone just because they seem normal. And never ever use Craigslist alone. Use Craigslist. I never used to be one of those people who got scared easily. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma called Redvale, the kind where kids rode their bikes in the middle of the road, and everyone knew who you were before you even introduced yourself. I was used to the slow pace of rural life, the isolation of long country roads, and the eerie calm that came with the stillness at night. But I always felt safe in that quiet, until one summer changed that for good. It was July. Hot, dry, and boring. I had just moved into my first house outside the town limits, about 15 minutes into the country. The place had a big open yard, and was right next to a string of old trails that used to be used by ATVs and dirt bikes back in the day. They were mostly grown over now, but still navigable. I remember thinking it would be cool to get a golf cart or side-by-side to ride around on, something to pass the time during the weekends. I wasn't looking to spend a fortune, just something used but decent. Craigslist seemed like a good place to start. At least back then, I thought it still had a few honest sellers left. I made a habit of checking listings over coffee each morning, and after about 2 weeks of searching, I found what looked like a gem. Club car golf cart, great condition, $1,300 OBO, must go. The pictures showed a forest green cart in excellent shape, parked in what looked like someone's barn. The post was simple with just a few lines about it running great and having been recently serviced. The seller's name was Dale, and the number had a Redvale area code. It was posted less than 30 minutes before I saw it. I sent a message right away. "Hi, is the golf cart still available?" He replied in about 10 minutes. "Still have it. Can show today if you're serious." We texted back and forth for a few minutes. He didn't ask me too many questions, didn't seem overly pushy or weird. Just said he lived out near Cedar Fork, about 10 miles outside of town. That area is known for big parcels of land, thick woods, and winding dirt roads. I figured if he lived out there, it made sense that he had some property and probably used the cart to get around it. I asked if I could come see it that afternoon. He said sure, but to come around 430 because he had some stuff to do earlier. He sent the address and I plugged it into my GPS. The pin dropped on a long road called Mockingbird Hollow Lane, which I didn't recognize, but Google Maps confirmed it was real. Just a dirt road that split off a larger one called Dixon Ridge. At 4:15 I grabbed my wallet, my keys, and a water bottle and headed out in my truck. I didn't tell anyone I was going, mostly because I didn't think twice about it. Looking back now, that was probably the dumbest mistake I made. The drive out was peaceful at first. Just golden fields on either side, the occasional rusted-out mailbox leaning from years of weather. Once I turned onto Mockingbird Hollow Lane though, the road narrowed. Trees started thickening on both sides, and the sunlight cut into stripes through the canopy above. I lost cell service about halfway down the road. I reached the pin. It wasn't marked by a mailbox or a number, just a thin gravel driveway flanked by 2 wooden fence posts. No gate. I double-checked the address. Same as the text. I pulled in and parked off to the side where the driveway widened just a bit. Ahead it twisted and disappeared behind a line of tall pine trees. As soon as I turned off the engine, I saw a man walking toward me from around the bend in the driveway. He waved. He looked to be in his mid-50s. Gray hair cut short, wore jeans and a faded flannel shirt. There was nothing especially odd about him at first glance. "You hear about the golf cart?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Dale, right?" He nodded. "Sure am. Come on, I'll take you to it." We walked side by side a short distance down the driveway. It curved around a clearing with a big, weathered barn off to one side. Parked under a lean-to attached to the barn was a golf cart, but not the green one from the pictures. This one was red and had a torn seat. "Oh, not this one," Dale said, noticing my expression. "That one's busted. The green one's a bit further out. Had to store it behind the property. Keeps the wife from nagging me about cluttering the barn." He laughed a bit, almost rehearsed. Then he patted the side of the red cart and motioned for me to get on. "You mind? I'll drive us over. It's a little bit of a ride, but it'll give you a chance to see how it handles." I hesitated. A small knot began forming in my gut, but I couldn't put a finger on why. "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. We both got in. He turned the key, and the cart rumbled to life. It was one of the faster models with off-road tires and a lift kit. As we rolled past the barn, The trail turned narrow and dipped into the woods. It wasn't paved or graveled, just dirt and roots. The deeper we went, the more overgrown it got. "How big is your property?" I asked after a few minutes. "About 40 acres. Inherited most of it from my old man. He was a loner, didn't like neighbors much." Dale said without looking at me. We kept riding. 5 minutes passed, then 10. "Is the cart way out here for a reason?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Well," he said after a pause, "technically the cart ain't exactly mine." "What do you mean?" I asked, heart rate already ticking up. He glanced at me almost smirking. "I'll explain when we get there." That was it. No follow-up, no chuckle, just silence. Then he pressed harder on the pedal, and we started climbing a hill through a narrower section of trail. I noticed now that we hadn't passed a single structure or sign of life in the past 10 minutes. No sheds, no fences, no signs that anyone but him ever came back here. Something primal kicked in. "Actually," I said, "I think I'm good. I'll pass on the cart." Dale didn't slow down. He chuckled low. "Oh, come on. We're already way out here. Might as well take a look." "No, I'm serious. Let's go back." He didn't even glance at me this time. Too late for that. I didn't wait for an explanation. As the cart bumped over a log near the top of the hill, I jumped. My feet hit the ground hard, and I stumbled sideways into the brush. My elbow scraped against a tree trunk, but I didn't stop. I heard the cart's brakes screech behind me, then nothing. I didn't look back. I ducked into the woods and ran. Branches whipped my arms and face. I tripped once over a root and landed in a patch of wet leaves. I scrambled up and kept running. Every few seconds I thought I heard footsteps behind me, but when I stopped it was dead quiet. After what felt like forever, I found a thin stream and started following it. Water meant it would eventually lead to a road, or at least somewhere not on Dale's land. I kept low, moved fast. My clothes were soaked and covered in burrs. Still no cell signal. It took me nearly 40 minutes before I reached a dirt road. Not the one I came in on. This one was older, less used. But it had tire tracks. I followed it and finally, I saw a wooden sign. Dixon Ridge Road. 2 miles. I hiked the 2 miles in silence, jumping at every sound. Eventually I reached a clearing where I saw the roof of my truck in the distance. But something was wrong. The driveway was now gated. A thick rusted chain wrapped through the posts. It hadn't been there before. I didn't stop to think. I jogged around the gate through a small break in the trees, climbed into my truck, and drove until I got my signal back. I pulled into a gas station near town and sat there for 20 minutes, shaking. I reported the listing to Craigslist and called the sheriff's department, but without a real name or proof anything happened, there wasn't much they could do. I never got a follow-up. I never found that trail again either. The listing was pulled, the number stopped working, and Dale, if that was even his name, vanished into the woods like smoke. I still think about how far into those woods we drove. What was waiting at the end of that trail? A shack? A hole in the ground? Someone else? Now, whenever I see a too good to be true deal online, I remember the way he said it. "Oh no, we're in too deep now, son. And I never, ever ride with strangers again." I'm not proud of how desperate I was back then. That's the first thing I always think when I replay that night in my head. It was 2015, and I was flat broke. I just moved to a small town outside Louisville, Kentucky, trying to restart my life after a pretty rough breakup, and even rougher few months crashing on my cousin's couch. I'd finally scraped together enough to rent a tiny one-bedroom in a duplex. No furniture to speak of, just a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, and a couple of cardboard boxes serving as a makeshift table. Every night after working a full shift at the gas station off Route 146, I'd come home, shower in the dingy little bathroom, microwave something cheap, and sit on the floor scrolling Craigslist's free section. I did this almost ritualistically, hoping for some miracle like a used microwave, a nightstand, a lamp. Anything that would make the place feel a little less empty, a little less like a hollow transition between before and after that night. I saw a listing that made my stomach drop a little in a good way at first. Free flat screen works, need gone tonight, Charlestown area, that was it. No fluff. No explanation, just a grainy image of a pretty nice looking flat screen TV, sitting on what looked like a hardwood floor in a nearly empty room. The TV was on, displaying a paused screen from a nature documentary. Ocean coral or something like that. I clicked on the contact link and sent a short, polite message. "Hi, I'm interested in the TV. Still available?" I didn't expect a reply right away. but within 5 minutes I got a text from a 502 number. "Yeah, still have it. You can pick it up tonight. Come after 9:30. I glanced at the time. It was 8:45 p.m. I figured I could finish dinner, grab my keys, and get there just after 9:30. The address they gave was in Charlestown, about a 20-minute drive. I'd never really been through that neighborhood before, but Google Maps didn't show anything crazy. I texted back, "Cool, I'll head that way. Thanks." There was no reply to that, but I didn't think anything of it. By 9:25, I was in my beat-up Civic, driving down a series of quiet roads. The deeper I got into Charlestown, the more rural and dark everything became. Fewer streetlights, older houses, some boarded up, some with yards so overgrown it was hard to tell if anyone lived there at all. The address was on a dead-end gravel road called Maple Hollow Lane. I pulled up slowly, headlights bouncing off potholes and patches of brush pushing in from the sides. The house was the last one on the right, set back about 50 feet from the road. It looked off. Not bad exactly, but odd. The porch light was on, but dim and flickering. There was no car in the driveway. The windows were all dark. The curtains were drawn. I parked along the side and texted again. "I'm here." The response came almost immediately. "Come on in. Doors open." That's when my stomach tensed. I remember just sitting there in my car for a second, staring at that message. I'd never picked something up from Craigslist where they told me to just come in. Normally people would meet you outside, or at least open the door and wave you in. Still, the idea of leaving without at least checking felt like giving up on the one nice thing I might be able to have in my apartment. So I got out. The front yard crunched under my shoes, gravel, no porch steps, just 2 cracked concrete slabs leading to the door. I knocked once, lightly, more out of habit than anything else. No answer. "Hello?" I called out, gently pushing the door open. It creaked. I wish I was exaggerating, but it actually creaked like something from a movie. The smell hit me next. Musty, like the place hadn't been lived in regularly. Not quite rotten, just unsettling. Inside, it was mostly empty. The layout was open. What would have been a living room, kitchen, and hallway visible from the front door. The only light was a small lamp in the far corner by the kitchen. A single bulb glowing yellow. I didn't see anyone. "Hello?" I called again. Then I heard it. A voice. Woman's voice. From somewhere deeper in the house. "Yeah, back here." Something about the tone was casual, almost cheerful. Too casual, maybe. I stepped inside, leaving the door partially open behind me. The living room was bare, save for a few moving boxes and a coat draped over a kitchen chair. The hardwood floors creaked under my feet. I turned toward the hallway where the voice had come from. As I got closer, I noticed something strange. The door to what I assumed was the hallway closet had one of those attic ladders pulled down, and from above, darkness, still. Perfect darkness, not the kind that comes from shadows. No, this was like looking into a space that swallowed light entirely. Then I saw her, a woman, maybe in her mid-40s, standing near the base of the ladder, off to the side in the kitchen. She wore a loose hoodie and jeans, barefoot, arms crossed, hair tied up in a sloppy bun. She didn't smile, didn't step closer, just gestured toward the attic. "TV's up there." Couldn't get it down myself. "Hope that's okay." I stood frozen for a second. "Oh yeah, sure," I replied awkwardly. "I can try." "Why?" "I don't know. I was raised to be polite. I didn't want to seem rude. I thought, just grab it and go." She nodded once and stepped out of sight behind the corner into the kitchen. Just like that, I grabbed the attic ladder and started climbing. The air got colder with each step. I don't mean metaphorically. It was a distinct temperature drop. My head broke through the attic opening, and I stopped. Pitch dark, no light at all. I pulled my phone from my pocket and turned on the flashlight. What I saw still doesn't sit right with me. There was a chair sitting in the center of the attic space, an old wooden chair, nothing else around it. Just the chair and a sheet laid out under it like a tarp. But the TV? No sign of it. Then I heard a sound behind me. A footstep. In the attic. I whipped the flashlight toward it, but nothing was there. Nothing I could see, at least. My whole body stiffened. My fingers gripped the ladder tighter. Then I heard something else. Breathing. Not mine. Not heavy. Not labored. Just steady, soft, maybe 10 feet in front of me in the dark. I didn't even think. I climbed back down so fast I nearly slipped. My foot missed a rung, and I scraped my shin. I landed hard and stumbled backward. No sign of the woman, no voice. I turned and bolted, through the living room out the front door, didn't bother shutting it, and straight to my car. My hands were shaking as I jammed the keys into the ignition. I didn't breathe until I was back on the main road. When I got home, I locked every door and window, sat in my bedroom with the light on trying to calm down. Eventually I checked Craigslist again. The ad was gone. I texted the number just to see what would happen. Didn't see the TV up there. You still have it? No reply. I waited until the next day. Still nothing. Eventually I tried calling. Disconnected. I never reported it. What would I even say? Hi, someone told me to climb into a pitch-dark attic for a free TV, and I think maybe there was someone waiting up there. Even now I wonder how close I came to something terrible, and what would have happened if I'd kept climbing or sat in that chair or waited. And I wonder how many times that ad was posted and taken down, and if the next person wasn't as lucky. I thought it was just a modeling gig. That's how these things always start, right? So ordinary, so believable. It was 2013, and I was 21, living in a suburb just outside of Santa Clarita, California. I had been trying to get into commercial acting and modeling for about a year. Nothing huge, just small stuff. Local ads, some product promotion jobs, a few music video extras. When you're young and trying to break in, you take what you can get. I was juggling a waitressing job at a steakhouse and applying for gigs online almost every day. I didn't have an agent, which meant I had to look for my own opportunities. And one of the best places for that, or so I thought at the time, was Craigslist. That was the mistake. Before all this happened, I'd done a few minor paid shoots, a car dealership spot, a wedding catalog ad, and one student film for a college out in Burbank. I wasn't famous or anything, but I had a small portfolio I was proud of. I'd even had a friend help me put together a comp card with some headshots. My goal was to move into promotional modeling, ideally for events or products that had big brands behind them. But things were slow. I was barely getting by. And when rent's due and you've eaten canned soup for 3 nights straight, your standards begin to drop. You start thinking, it's just a quick job. I'll be careful. I'll ask the right questions. That's exactly what I thought the day I saw the Craigslist ad. The headline was simple. Model needed for product shoot. Paid gig. $250 per day. Underneath it said, seeking a female model 18 to 30 to help promote a new product line. Light modeling and promotional work for a local business. No nudity. Professional setting. Quick and easy pay. Please email with experience and at least 1 photo. I remember rereading the line professional setting 3 or 4 times. It calmed something in me, made it feel more official. It sounded like one of those event gigs where you hand out flyers or pose with a product display. I'd done similar work at a tech conference in Anaheim the year before. It seemed normal enough. So I emailed. I attached 2 of my portfolio shots, 1 headshot and 1 full body, and listed a short resume. Commercial acting experience, some catalog work, promotional event experience. I mentioned I had weekends free, and I'd be willing to drive within an hour if the pay was right. The response. The reply came the next morning. His name was Eli. The email read, "Hi, thanks for responding. I like your look, and I think you'd be perfect for this promo campaign. It's a new product line launching next month, and we're doing a local trial. Would love to meet you to go over the details and show you a sample of the product. Nothing intense, just a quick face-to-face before we book. We can meet this week. I'm in the Mission Grove area, not far from you. Let me know what day works." Eli. There was no business name, no website. That should have been red flag number 1. But I convinced myself maybe it was just a startup trying to be discreet. I replied, asking for more details about the product, and whether we could meet in a public space like a cafe. He said he was super busy and preferred to do meetings at his place where he had the product samples. That was red flag number 2. But again, $250 for a day's work, and I was broke. My phone bill had just bounced the week before. I convinced myself I'd just go during the day. I even told my roommate about it, casually, like it was no big deal. I said, "Hey, I've got this quick gig interview thing in Mission Grove. I'll be back in like an hour or 2. She asked if I wanted her to come. I smiled and said, "Nah, it's chill. Just a little modeling thing. I'll text you." Famous last words. His address was in a newer apartment complex near a bunch of industrial parks and gas stations. Not quite residential, not quite commercial. I pulled up to a place called Amber Pines Apartments. Clean. Gated. Nothing sketchy on the surface. I texted him. "Hey, I'm here." A minute later, he replied, "Come to 2C. I'll buzz you in. I walked up the steps, hesitating briefly outside the door. Something about the stillness made me pause. I knocked. A few seconds passed before the door opened. "Hey," he said. "You're Grace, right?" I nodded. "Yeah." Eli was in his 30s, maybe early 40s. Slender, clean-shaven, dark hoodie and jeans. Not what I expected. No clipboard, no samples out, no lights, no other people. He stepped aside. "Come on in." I stepped in. The apartment was off, not dirty, but bare. No art on the walls, no furniture beyond a couch and a folding table. I saw a camera tripod in the corner, but no lights or backdrops. He motioned to the couch. "You can sit," he said. "I'll grab the stuff." I sat. My phone buzzed in my purse. My roommate texting Amin. I didn't reply. I just felt this pit in my stomach begin to grow. He came back from a side room holding a manila folder and what looked like a small bottle of perfume. "This is the product," he said, handing me the bottle. "It's a scent line. We're working on how to package and market it." I nodded, turning the bottle in my hand. There was no label. He sat across from me on a kitchen bar stool, staring. "So," he said, "you've done this kind of thing before?" I nodded again, more reserved this time. "Yeah, some promo events, commercials, nothing too crazy." He smiled, then asked where I lived, if I had a boyfriend, if I was working anywhere else. His questions got personal quickly. I dodged some of them, or gave vague answers. He started leaning forward. "You've got a good look," he said. "Very natural. We could probably use you for more than just the one shoot." I forced a smile. "Cool." Then silence. He was just staring at me. "I think you'd be a good fit," he said, after a long pause. "But you'd need to be comfortable with close camera work. You okay with like fragrance modeling? Showing the bottle in your hand, spritzing it on your neck. We might do some video too." "That's fine," I said quickly, standing up. "But I'll need the full info sent over before I commit." He didn't move, just sat there on that stool, looking up at me with this expressionless face. Then finally he said, "Okay. Yeah, no problem." I was already halfway to the door when I heard him say behind me, "You really sure you don't want the job?" There was something off in the tone, too soft, like he was disappointed. "Yeah," I said, forcing my voice steady. I'm sure he opened the door for me barely. I slipped out, muttered a quick thanks, and practically ran down the steps. When I got home, I felt weird, unsettled, not quite terrified, but shaken. I didn't tell my roommate all the details, just that it felt off, and I passed on the job. 2 weeks later, I got a new gig, waitressing at a new bistro in West Hollywood. Life moved on until a month later. I was scrolling on my phone during my lunch break, mindlessly looking through local news when I saw a headline that froze my entire body. "Man arrested for stalking and threatening aspiring models through Craigslist scam." I clicked it, and there it was, his face, Eli. Or rather, Elijah Barnett, age 38, accused of creating fake modeling gigs online, luring women to his apartment under the guise of auditions, and later stalking them if they declined. One woman said he sent her over 50 emails after a single meeting. Another said he waited outside her apartment for hours. One reported him trying to follow her after a second meeting. I sat frozen in the staff bathroom reading every word. My stomach was in knots. It could have been me. I still don't know why he didn't pursue me after that day. Maybe I didn't give him enough to go on. Maybe I didn't seem vulnerable enough. Maybe I just got lucky. I saved a screenshot of the article and emailed it to myself with the subject. Close call. There's a fine line between a job opportunity and a trap when you're desperate and young. I always told myself I was street smart, that I knew how to spot red flags. But the truth is, when you want to believe something is safe, your brain works overtime to make it feel that way. I never looked for jobs on Craigslist again after that. And now, more than a decade later, I still think about that day. That blank apartment, that unblinking stare, and how close I came to becoming one of the women in the article. It wasn't just a modeling gig. It was bait, and I almost bit. I was just 18 when it happened. It's been almost 20 years now, but I still remember that day clearly. How everything spiraled from something as normal as selling an old laptop to something that still keeps me up some nights. Back then I lived in Cedar Hills, a quiet suburb just outside Spokane, Washington. I had just graduated high school that summer, and was in that weird limbo space between finishing school and figuring out what came next. I wasn't going off to college right away like some of my friends. My family didn't have the money for that, and I hadn't lined up a job yet either. Instead, I spent a lot of time at home, playing games, watching movies, or just scrolling the internet. My parents were supportive, but always gave me that what's next look. So when I finally got some graduation money from family, I did the one thing I probably shouldn't have. I bought myself a brand new laptop. Nothing crazy, just something sleeker, faster. The old one, a bulky Dell that cost me nearly $2,000 when it was new, was still in good condition, but by tech standards it was outdated. I figured I could sell it for a few $100. I cleaned it up, wiped the hard drive, and posted it on Craigslist for $500. Within a few hours I got a reply. A guy named Matt messaged me saying he was interested and wanted to take a look. He wrote in full sentences, seemed polite, said he needed it for work. I responded right away. I figured we could meet at the Dunkin' across town sometime the following week, but Matt replied saying he really needed a laptop as soon as possible and asked if we could meet that day. I can swing by your place if that works, he wrote. Something about it felt a little off. I didn't really want a stranger coming to my house, but I didn't have a car, and I didn't feel like asking anyone to drive me anywhere either. My parents were away for the weekend visiting my aunt in Seattle, and I was home alone. I should have said no. I should have trusted my gut, but I didn't. Instead, I sent him my address and told him to come by around 6:30. At exactly 6:27 p.m., I heard a vehicle pull into the driveway. I peeked through the blinds and saw a dark green Dodge Caravan that had definitely seen better days. The engine cut. The front door opened and a man stepped out, Matt, presumably. He looked older than I expected, maybe early 30s, with a thin build, dark hoodie and baseball cap pulled low. But he wasn't alone. The passenger side opened and another man got out, stockier, older, with short graying hair and wearing a sleeveless shirt. I stood there holding the laptop in my arms, suddenly unsure about everything. Relax. Muttered to myself, you're being paranoid. They're just here for the laptop. I opened the door as they approached. You must be Matt, I asked. Yeah, he said, smiling briefly. This is my buddy Rich. He's driving me around today. My car's in the shop. Okay, I said, stepping back to let them in. Come on in, laptop's in the kitchen. We walked into the house, and I placed the laptop on the table. Matt sat down and started looking it over, while Rich leaned against the wall. Mind if I use your bathroom? Rich asked suddenly. Sure, just down that hallway, first door on the left. He gave me a nod and walked off. Matt was asking a few questions about the laptop, RAM, battery life, what kind of software it had. I answered as best I could, but I found myself distracted. Something felt wrong. Rich had been gone for a while, way longer than needed for just using the bathroom. Then I heard it. Footsteps. But not from the hallway. From above. The second floor. My heart dropped. The bathroom was on the first floor. There was no reason for him to be upstairs. Hey, I asked, trying to sound casual. Is your friend okay? Matt's tone shifted immediately. His eyes stayed on the laptop, but his voice dropped. He's fine. He said firmly, don't worry about it. He placed one hand on the laptop. The other reached out and gripped my shoulder tight. I flinched. Don't make this a problem, he said. That's when everything clicked. This wasn't a laptop sale. This was a setup. They weren't just here to scam me. They were robbing me. I tried to stay calm. I glanced at the table. My phone was sitting there, just out of reach. Look, I said, my voice shaking. Take the laptop. Take whatever you want. Just don't hurt me. Matt didn't respond. He just stared at me. His grip on my shoulder tightened even more. Then, out of pure instinct or maybe adrenaline, I twisted away and bolted straight toward my dad's office. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands trembling. I'd left my phone behind. Stupid. But there was a landline. I lunged for it and dialed 911. My name is Jordan Meyer. I live at 1146 Oakview Lane. Two men just came into my house pretending to buy a laptop, and I think they're robbing me. One is upstairs. Please send help. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line. She asked questions, but I could barely breathe. I heard thumping, heavy footsteps, doors opening upstairs. They were ransacking my house. Do not come out of the room, the dispatcher said. Stay where you are. Then I heard voices, Matt and Rich shouting to each other. One calling from upstairs, the other near the kitchen. Then the front door slammed. I peeked out the window. They were running back to the van. I watched as they peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching. The police arrived 7 minutes later. 7 minutes that felt like a lifetime. They were kind, but didn't seem overly hopeful. I gave them everything I could. Descriptions, what I knew about the Craigslist post, the emails. They dusted a few surfaces for prints, took a quick inventory of what was missing. The final tally: my old Dell laptop, a small 24-inch kitchen TV, my mom's jewelry box from the master bedroom, $200 in cash from my sister's desk. Total value: close to $3,000. I called my parents and told them what happened. At first, they thought I was joking. Dark humor wasn't out of character for me. But once they heard the seriousness in my voice, they rushed back home that night. They were furious. Not just about what was stolen, but that I'd let strangers into our house. I couldn't even argue. It was my fault. I tried to follow up with the police a few times in the weeks that followed, but they never found the guys. I don't think they even tried that hard. Craigslist scams were a dime a dozen back then. That summer, instead of enjoying freedom or going out with friends, I spent it working double shifts at a local grocery store to pay my parents back. Every dollar I earned went toward making up for my mistake. I learned a lot that year. I never used Craigslist again to sell anything. Not unless I was meeting someone in public. Daylight only. Crowded place only. No exceptions. I was lucky, all things considered. They could have hurt me. They could have done much worse. And all it took was one email, one response, one impulsive decision. These days, when people talk about buying or selling stuff online, I don't say much. But in the back of my mind, I always think they weren't here for a laptop. They were here for a house with no parents. They were here for someone stupid enough to open the door. And unfortunately, that day, that was me. I had just turned 30 when this happened, and I had been living in my duplex for about 7 years. It was one of those old 1940s homes you find scattered across parts of Michigan. Worn brick exterior, weathered siding, narrow porches with cracked concrete but solid bones underneath. I bought it right after college with a small inheritance, and over time I fixed it up room by room. It had taken a lot of long nights and YouTube tutorials, but I was proud of how it turned out. The house was split evenly down the middle. I lived on the left side, and I rented out the right. Each side had 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, with the only bathroom located at the top of the narrow staircase. One of those weird older layouts that made you question how families managed back then. Over the years, I'd had a few different tenants, but the last family, well, they were ideal. Jason and Morgan were in their early 30s, like me, with 3 kids under 10. They were quiet, always paid rent early, and we got along well enough that sometimes I'd bring over leftover baked goods or help Jason shovel snow from the walkway in winter. We weren't friends exactly, but we were neighborly. But space was tight. I mean, 1 bathroom for 5 people. Morgan had told me more than once that it was driving her crazy. So it didn't shock me when they told me they'd found a new place out in Brighton. Bigger home, bigger yard, more modern layout. I was happy for them. They moved out at the end of April. I gave them the whole month to clear out and didn't hassle them about small stuff. When I finally went over to inspect the unit, they'd left behind a few odds and ends, a scratched-up wooden kitchen table, and a pile of plastic bins full of kids' toys, action figures, board games with missing pieces, a few old dolls, and a handful of those little Hot Wheels cars. Before leaving, Morgan texted me. "We didn't have room for everything. Okay to leave those toys. You can toss them if you want to give them away." I didn't see the harm. I figured I could either sell them cheap or donate them somewhere. That evening, after finishing up a patch job on the drywall and touching up some paint in the bedrooms, I took some quick photos of the toys and listed them on Craigslist. I bundled the entire lot for $20, just enough to maybe interest someone local, but not enough that I'd feel bad if no one ever came. The table sold within 2 days. A guy from Ferndale picked it up and left cash in my mailbox. The toys, though, no bites, not even lowball offers. I wasn't in a rush, so I left the listing up and forgot about it for a few weeks. Then, out of the blue, I got a message from Andy James, 273 subject, toys. "Hey, still got those toys. Would like to come by Saturday if that works." His profile looked basic, nothing shady. The email address didn't raise any red flags, and I had enough experience selling things online that I didn't think twice. I replied, told him Saturday afternoon worked, and gave him my address. Saturday was warm, but cloudy. One of those mid-May days where the trees have fully bloomed, and the air smells like grass and last night's rain. I spent the morning finishing up cleaning the rental unit. Nothing major, just wiping windows, scrubbing the tub, making sure the carpets didn't smell like crayons and juice boxes. Around 12:30 p.m., I walked back to my side, made a sandwich, and sat by the window scrolling through my phone. Around 1:15, I heard a vehicle pull up. I peeked through the blinds. The truck was old. A rusty Ford F-150, probably early 90s. Dull red paint that had long since faded to a dusty pink, and a muffler that sounded like a dying lawnmower. The man who stepped out wasn't anything remarkable at first glance. Maybe mid to late 40s, average height and build, dressed in dark jeans and a windbreaker despite the warmth. He wore a ball cap pulled low and dark sunglasses. I watched him for a moment. He moved slow, not in a physically limited way. More like someone who didn't have anywhere to be. I stepped out onto the porch as he reached the walkway. "Hey there," I called. He raised a hand. "Here for the toys." "Yeah, come on in. They're just inside the other unit." I unlocked the rental and pushed the door open. "They're in the living room. If you want to take a look, I'll grab a bag or two in case you need them." I walked in first, expecting to hear his footsteps behind me. But when I turned, he wasn't inside. He stood in the doorway, just inside the threshold, one hand resting on the frame, eyes scanning the room slowly. "You can come in," I said, trying to keep things light. He didn't move. Instead, after a long pause, he asked, "Where are the kids?" I froze. It was such an odd question. It wasn't accusatory or casual. It was like he was genuinely confused, almost annoyed. "They moved," I said. "Family relocated. I'm just clearing out what they left." He didn't respond. His lips pressed into a tight line and his eyes, still hidden behind those sunglasses, stayed locked on the floor for a beat too long. "I just wanted to say hi," he muttered. That didn't make sense. I forced a polite laugh. "Well, I'm the only one here now." Still, he didn't come inside. I stepped back a little. "Do you still want the toys?" "It's 20 for the whole lot. You're welcome to dig through and pick what you want." His head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then without a word, he turned around and walked out. He didn't even glance at the toys, just turned and left. The truck rattled to life, coughed black smoke, and rolled away down the street. I stood in the doorway for a full minute before I moved. My heart wasn't racing, but something felt deeply wrong. The way he asked about the kids. The way he stood there like he was disappointed. Like he'd come for something else. I locked the door. Then I locked mine. I didn't call the cops because, what would I even say? A man came to pick up some toys and acted weird. That's not illegal. Instead, I called my brother-in-law, Mark. He's a sheriff's deputy a few counties over. I explained what happened. He didn't laugh or dismiss it. He just asked questions. "Did he ever go near your side of the duplex?" "No." "Did he ask for you by name?" "No." "Did he seem high or intoxicated?" "No. Just off." "Well," Mark said. "Creepy as hell, but he didn't do anything. Still trust your gut. Keep an eye out. If you see that truck again, call the non-emergency line. Get the plate if you can." That night I kept the porch light on. I even dragged an old dining chair up to the window with the best view of the street. But he never came back. 2 weeks later, I deleted the Craigslist ad. I donated the toys to a church across town and left the bins outside the door for pickup. One night, about a month after the incident, I came home late from visiting my parents. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw a truck parked 2 houses down. It wasn't red. It wasn't rusty, but it was the same make and model. I sat there in my car, headlights off, watching. After 5 minutes, it pulled away slowly. No turn signal. No rush. Just drifted down the street like it had been waiting for nothing at all. I never saw it again after that. But for weeks, every knock, every stranger on the street, every delivery truck that paused too long made my skin crawl. I don't know what that man was planning. Maybe nothing. Maybe he was just strange. But the way he asked about the kids and how fast he left when he realized they weren't there, that still haunts me. And I never posted on Craigslist again. I was broke. Not the kind of broke where you skip a few coffees or cancel Netflix. This was real bottom of the barrel broke. I was 19 heading into my second year at Carter State University in Iowa, and the summer had been a mixed bag. I'd spent June and July working with my uncle's roofing crew back home in Marquette, a small town near the Minnesota border. But that job dried up when we finished the last duplex project earlier than expected. With August ahead of me and zero savings, I figured it made sense to just move back to Carter early and get settled. The lease on our off-campus house had already started in May. My 2 roommates, Dean and Trey, were still at home enjoying their last few weeks of freedom. I wasn't. I'd packed up my clothes, my beat-up HP laptop, and my $15 fan from Walmart, threw it all into my '98 Camry, and drove back to the city. The house sat on Redmond Avenue, near the edge of the college district. A lot of students lived nearby, but in August the whole area was a ghost town. Rows of old boxy houses with sun-faded curtains and dusty porches. Silent, waiting for life to return. Our place was a 2-story with flaking paint, a sagging porch, and a forever sticky kitchen floor. But rent was $900 split 3 ways, and to me that was golden. The first few days alone were fine. I watched lost reruns on my laptop, ate cheap frozen burritos, and played old games on a scratched PS2. But after a week, I started going stir-crazy. I needed to get out, and more than that, I needed cash. Rent was due soon, and I wasn't about to ask my dad again. He'd already made it clear. If you're gonna live like an adult, then solve your own mess like one. Fair enough. That's when I turned to Craigslist. Not for the first time. Back in high school, I'd used it to buy a pair of used headphones and once tried selling my BMX bike before backing out. But I'd never really looked at the gigs section before. I figured even a few days of random work might cover groceries and bills until my part-time job at the library picked back up in September. I refreshed the page about a dozen times before something caught my eye. Help needed. Light moving work, $100 cash, 1 day only. Looking for someone to help load furniture into a van, 3 to 4 hours. No lifting over 50 pounds. Need someone reliable and on time. Text me if interested. It sounded simple. No sketchy promises of modeling or survey jobs that screamed scam. The guy's name was listed as Mark D, and the area code matched somewhere in Des Moines not far. I texted. Got a reply within 10 minutes. Hey, thanks for the message. Need help moving some stuff out of a house I'm managing for a family that relocated. You free tomorrow morning? Can pick you up around 10. I hesitated for maybe half a second. He sounded normal, fast, but normal. Yeah, I'm free. Text me your number and address. The next morning, August 9th. I remembered because it was the same day my bank account hit $4.81. I stood on the front porch with my backpack, just in case, dressed in an old hoodie, jeans, and work gloves. The sun was already baking the pavement. A large white cargo van rolled slowly up the street and stopped in front of the house. No company logo, just plain white. I squinted as the window rolled down. Colin? The guy asked. Yeah, I replied. He stepped out. He was about 6 feet, 2 inches, mid-40s, with a scruffy beard and a thick build like someone who maybe lifted in his 20s and never quite lost it. Wore cargo pants, a faded brown t-shirt, and sunglasses. His handshake was firm, but didn't linger. I'm Mark, he said. You ever moved furniture before? Yeah, a couple times. I lied. Helped my cousin move last summer. Cool. This won't be bad. Just a few heavier pieces. Load, drive, unload. Easy $100. That was all I needed to hear. I tossed my bag in the van and got in. We drove for over 30 minutes. I watched out the window as the city gave way to suburbs, then to the kind of brand new developments where the houses all look like catalog models. Fake shutters, bright garages, identical roofs. These were the kind of places built in rows. Neat and sterile, with barely lived-in lawns. Eventually, we pulled into a cul-de-sac. There were no kids, no bikes, no sprinklers. Just silent houses. It felt too new. The one we stopped at was a 2-story gray home with white trim. No decorations, no car in the driveway. Every window covered. I stepped out. Looks pretty empty, I said. Family moved overseas. Job relocation, Mark replied, already walking around the back of the house. I have the key. Front doors jammed. I waited. It was quiet. No birds, no wind. Just heat and stillness. Then I heard the door click, and Mark waved me in from the now open front door. Inside was cool, spotless, and smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. But something didn't sit right. No boxes, no labels. No moving tape. The living room had a flat-screen TV on a stand, a nice sectional couch, a coffee table with a fake-looking fruit bowl. The dining table was set, forks perfectly placed. It was the kind of house you'd see in a realtor's ad, not one being packed up. You sure they moved? I asked, trying to sound casual. Yeah, they left it all staged for resale, he said, grabbing a hand truck from a nearby closet. We're just grabbing a few pieces the company doesn't need. Something felt off. Still, I followed him and helped load the TV. Then a couple of stools, some chairs, and a heavy end table. The van was half full after about 40 minutes. It was on the second trip to the van that my gut finally screamed at me. I looked around the street again. Not a single car moved. Not one window twitched. The mailbox had no name. There wasn't even a for sale sign out front. "Mark," I said slowly, "how did you get in again?" He paused, key under the mat. "No realtor lockbox or anything." "Nah." He kept moving fast. My stomach twisted. I pulled out my phone, a tiny Motorola flip phone I kept in my pocket, and pretended to check a message. I stepped back toward the van. "Hey," I said, "I just got a text, family emergency. My grandma, she had a fall. I gotta go." "I'm sorry." Mark froze. His eyes didn't blink. Then his voice dropped. "You're not going anywhere." My blood iced over. I turned and ran. I heard him shout. Something muffled angry. The van door slammed behind me. My feet hit pavement, then grass. I vaulted a low fence into someone's backyard, heart pounding like a jackhammer. I heard the van's engine roar to life. It peeled out of the driveway. I ducked between two sheds and crouched low, sucking in air. The sound of the van drifted away. Once I was sure I'd lost him, I called 911. My hands shook as I explained everything. Cops met me at a nearby gas station 20 minutes later. I gave them the house address, a description of the van, and of Mark. They ran the plates caught on nearby security footage. Turns out the house had just been finished 2 weeks earlier. The real owners were still living in the Netherlands and had hired a company to stage it for listing. None of the items were meant to be moved. Mark, real name Brian Culver, had already hit the house multiple times. He'd taken smaller stuff the first few days. Silverware, decor, probably electronics. No one noticed because the neighborhood was barely occupied. He got cocky, needed help with the big stuff. That's where I came in. I gave a full statement. No, I didn't know. Yes, I suspected something and ran. No, I didn't know his real name. No, I didn't touch anything but what he handed me. Yes, I wanted to help. They said I did the right thing. That reporting had probably saved me from being charged or worse. Brian was arrested later that day when he tried to pawn the TV. Security cameras, license plate hits, and my statement nailed him. He had a long record of fraud and theft. This was just his latest project. The owners got most of their stuff back. I never saw the $100, but I didn't care. I kept thinking, what if I hadn't run? What if he'd locked the door? What if he'd panicked and thought I'd turn him in? He wasn't just a thief. He was desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. For weeks, I couldn't stop checking over my shoulder. Every white van made my stomach drop. I still use Craigslist, but never for jobs and never again with strangers. That summer taught me that the real horror isn't in haunted houses or shadowy monsters. It's in the quiet, sunny cul-de-sac, where no one's watching, where help isn't coming, and where someone like Brian waits with a key that was never his. I was desperate for a change. After 3 years at the same college in my hometown, I was ready to finish my degree somewhere else, somewhere with more opportunities, more people, and more life. I'd spent the first part of the summer weighing my options, and by July I decided to transfer to a school out in Lakemont, a small but growing city about 8 hours from where I lived. Lakemont wasn't exactly New York, but it had a strong arts program and way more job prospects than my sleepy hometown. The plan was to finish my last year there, graduate, and hopefully stay on afterward if things worked out. The only problem was I didn't know a soul out there. My parents were supportive, but they couldn't offer much in the way of help. Money had been tight ever since my mom got laid off. I had a summer job working at a local warehouse, and it didn't pay much, but I'd managed to scrape together just enough to cover moving costs and maybe a couple months' rent if I was lucky. My job ended mid-August. That gave me about 2 weeks to find housing before the semester started. The search wasn't going well. Every evening after work, I'd sit down at my beat-up laptop and scroll through listings on Facebook Marketplace, local student housing boards, and of course Craigslist. I wasn't picky, at least not at first, but Lakemont was a college town, and competition for rooms was fierce. I sent out message after message. Most went unanswered. A few told me the rooms had already been rented. 1 or 2 sounded good at first, but then asked for things that raised red flags, like cash in advance with no contract, or agreeing to meet in the woods behind the gas station, which obviously was a no. By the second week of August, I was panicking. I'd started replying to listings I didn't even like. I couldn't afford to be selective anymore. One night I came across a Craigslist post titled, "Bright room available, walk to campus, students only." The pictures looked fine. Nothing amazing, but clean. A small sunny room with a twin bed, a desk, and a window. The ad said it was a student house. 5 bedrooms, all rented by students at my new school. It was less than a mile from campus. The rent was reasonable, lower than most in fact, but not so low that it screamed scam. It seemed like a lucky break. I messaged the poster right away. He replied within the hour. His name, he said, was Tom Adler. Said he was a part-time landlord and worked in tech. He owned the house, lived out of state, and didn't usually meet his tenants in person. That felt a little weird, but he was friendly and professional. Totally understand if that's a deal breaker, he told me on the phone. But I can assure you the place is just as described. I can send you the lease and room details today. You'll love the roommates. Really chill. All students like you. He emailed me a PDF of the lease. It looked real. Standard rental agreement stuff. It even had a few specific rules like quiet hours after 10 p.m. and no pets, which made it feel more legit. The photos matched what he'd posted in the ad. Then came the part one didn't want to deal with. I'll need first and last month's rent up front before I hold the room, he said. Sorry, I've just been burned before. I hesitated. That was over $1,200. It was basically all I had left. I get it, he said. I'll send you the full contract and receipt once it's processed. You'll have everything in writing. If it helps, I can even put you in touch with one of the roommates. He did. A guy named Josh emailed me, said he was one of the housemates, and he liked living there. In hindsight, it's obvious now that the Josh email was fake, probably written by the same guy. But at the time, it pushed me over the edge. I wired the money the next morning. When my warehouse job ended a week later, I loaded up my car with everything I owned, clothes, dishes, some old posters, and hit the road. The drive to Lakemont took most of the day. I was sweaty, exhausted, but excited. I'd spoken to Tom just the day before, and he said someone would leave the key under the mat. As I pulled up to the address, I remember feeling relieved. The house looked exactly like the one in the photos. White siding, clean porch, small front yard. Nothing fancy, but it was solid. I parked on the street, grabbed my backpack, and walked up the steps. There was no key under the mat. I rang the doorbell. A guy answered. Mid-20s. Looked like a student. Hey, I said. I'm supposed to be moving into the open room here. Is Tom around? The guy looked confused. I think you've got the wrong place, he said. No, this is 1417 Oak Ridge Drive, right? Yeah, but no one's moving in here. There's no open room. I stood there for a second, completely blank. Are you sure? I signed a lease with the landlord, Tom Adler. The guy shook his head. I've lived here for 2 years. Our landlord's name is Maria. She lives in town. Never heard of Tom. I backed off the porch, my heart hammering in my chest. Back in my car, I double-checked everything. The email, the lease, the texts. The address was correct. The house was real. But the people, the landlord, gone. I tried calling Tom. No answer. I texted, hey, I'm here. No one seems to know you. Nothing. I called again. Voicemail. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. I'd been scammed. $1,200 gone. No apartment. No backup plan. Nowhere to sleep. And not a single familiar face in this entire city. I drove to a nearby coffee shop just to sit and think. I connected to the Wi-Fi and started going over everything. I reported the listing to Craigslist. Filed a complaint. Emailed the fake Tom again, even though I knew it was pointless. Then I tried the police. They were surprisingly helpful. The officer I spoke to, Detective Garvey, told me this kind of thing wasn't new. Rental scams were on the rise, especially in college towns right before semesters started. I won't lie to you, he said. It's hard to catch these guys. They use fake names, burner emails, cash transfers. But send us everything you've got. Emails, texts, payment receipts. We'll see what we can do. It was better than nothing. But it didn't fix the fact that I had no place to sleep that night. I couldn't afford a hotel. So I parked in a 24-hour grocery store lot and curled up in the back seat of my car. Windows cracked just enough to let in air. It was still hot. My spine ached. I barely slept. The next day, I started the hunt again. I posted on student groups, looked for sublets, anything. Late that afternoon I found something. A basement apartment, technically 7 bedrooms, although 2 were shared. It was in a rougher part of town, but the rent was dirt cheap and move-in was immediate. I met the current tenant that night. He barely looked up from his video game. You cool with sharing a kitchen and 1 bathroom with 6 other people? He asked. Yeah, I said. It was a dungeon, concrete floors, no windows in my room, stained ceiling, but I took it. It was better than the car. Classes started the following week. I focused on surviving. School, work, sleep, repeat. I tried not to think about the $1,200 I'd lost. Every dollar I spent now was borrowed or scraped together from ramen-level savings. Then about a month later, I got a call. It was Detective Garvey. "We got him," he said. Apparently, the scammer had been dumb enough to use a traceable account. The email he used to receive the payment was linked to an IP address that hadn't been masked. That IP led to a guy named Reed Jacobs, a small-time fraudster with a couple of prior offenses. They'd tracked him down and found evidence of multiple Craigslist rental scams, all targeting students. "I can't promise anything," Garvey said, "but with your help, we're going to press charges. And you should get your money back once it goes through court." It took months, but eventually I did. The court ordered Reed to pay restitution. I got a check in the mail just before Christmas. He got probation, community service, and a pretty hefty fine. Looking back, I was lucky. Lucky the guy didn't wipe his tracks better. Lucky the police actually cared. Lucky that I didn't give up and go home. But that summer left a scar. I became a lot more careful about people, about promises, about what seemed too good to be true. Craigslist might still have good deals, but for me, that was the last time I ever used it for housing.